We're live.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jack. I'll wait for the attendees sort of trickle in over a bit of time, right? They're not all in at once. I see 16, 17. Okay. And Raymond for what? 118, I understand.
So and I'm going to put my phone on silence, and then I'll pipe in when questions.
Okay. And there will be questions, I promise you. By golly, if the 118 people don't have them, which I would find very surprising, we got our own. We're about halfway there, so we'll officially start in just a couple of seconds. Everyone's coming in. We're up to 71. Welcome, everyone, so far. Okay. That is starting to mellow out. All right, perfect. All right, just the last trickle. So welcome, everybody. This is just going to be a terrific hour. We know there are a lot of questions out there, and we have assembled some of our favorite people, some of the people that have been partners to the SBDC statewide for years. And so the KSBDC, just the shortest of commercials for us. We are here through 8 centers throughout the state of Kansas to help businesses start up and grow. And our services are already provided by tax dollars. We're business advisors, and we're happy to help with this process. Our biggest goal is probably access to capital and job creation. And for that, we need small business owners, because small business owners are 40% of the GDP and half of the employment out there, which is why we're going to be talking today a lot about the Paycheck Protection Program to keep your employees employed, because you guys are truly the drivers of our economy. So we are joined, like I said, by some amazing resources. We're going to start with Monica Dahl. Monica, my God, I love your LinkedIn profile. She asks, are you a business that is looking for a partner that offers new ideas, creativity, and resources? I could not think of a better term for you. I know when I bring you to clients, or I'm sorry, bring clients to you, well, either one, you deliver sometimes. They truly look at you as a partner, and just we really appreciate you. Anything you'd like to tell folks about your background?
Just been focused on this, a lot of SBA in my background, so it's helped with this process, although this is not like any other SBA program around. So I am learning as with everybody else on the phone at the same time, but hopefully digesting it and able to answer some questions today. So thanks for having me.
Oh man, thanks for being here, Monica. Vince Hayworth, the free agent banker, fab, banker to the stars. Once a recording agent, right? And you got such a cool background, man. And I wish you were doing this from your man cave, because I remember all the stuff that you had in there, man, in the background. But about 20 years of banking experience, and pretty much all of it SBA, right?
About 20 years of 23 years of banking experience, and actually about 7 years of SBA specific experience, and about 11 years on the commercial side.
Wow. Okay. So great chops, the two of you. And thanks for being here. Russ Bonatabatis. And I said that so fast that I hope that if I screwed it up, it just went right out of there really fast. You and I have not met, but oh my gosh, you come highly recommended by Lisa Brumbaugh in our Emporia KSBDC office. Lisa is incredibly smart and not easy to impress. And so if she recommends you, I can't think of a higher recommendation. You and I were neighbors once, man. I grew up in Rhode Island, and where did you hail from originally?
Actually, I hailed from Connecticut, so I'm in the Midwest. I've been in the Midwest longer than I was ever up in the New England area.
There you go. And my gosh, what am I looking at? 25 years of experience for you, right?
Yep, 25 years experience. Almost all of that's been in commercial lending, and been doing SBA loans for probably close to 20 years.
Wow. So we got a lot of experience. And Jessica Johnson, our director, shared some fantastic news in terms of the PPP. My God, man, you guys are knocking it out of the park. I understand you've approved 120 and actually closed 90 of those loans already.
Yes.
That is fantastic. That is absolutely
fantastic. We have a great workforce here, and everybody's putting in extra time, and it takes a lot of time and energy to do that, but we know our customers in our community need it, and we've made the adjustment to make sure they can get it.
Fantastic. Well, it's working. And Monica, my gosh, I mean, I think as soon as the application was out, you were getting it out to clients. It was that the same within an hour. I think you were sending the thing out. I think you were
Yeah,
sending it out
absolutely.
before I was even aware of it. And so, and Vince, you've been working with clients and banks on both sides of this thing with your consulting and sharing your expertise to make this process go. So thank you all. So, all right, with your approval, let's dive into some questions, by golly. Let me
Absolutely.
pull them over here. My desk looks a little bit like NASA with 3 screens. So, all right, right off the bat, apparently there was an older form for the Paycheck Protection Program loan. What happens if someone filled that out ahead of time? Who would like to tackle that?
I can take that one if you'd like. So there's a form that came out before the Friday before the 3rd, I guess. And that form has an expiration date on the top right-hand corner of June 30th. The new form does replace that form. The first day or so, we could accept that original form, but they're saying now anybody after that, we really do need that replaced with the correct verbiage on the new form. So one of the things we're asking is just be proactive. If your banker hasn't reached out to you, maybe you filled out an application online, look up that application, fill that out and have it ready to go because you're going to have to. So make sure that, again, the top right-hand corner should say expiration of September 30th. And that's the correct form you should be using.
Fantastic. So that'll let us know what where we go, what they need to look for. Fantastic. And I unpinned your video and it didn't go back. So let's see what else we can do here. Well, I can pin somebody else. There we go.
This is Russ.
Yes.
One thing that we've done on that form, because they literally changed that form the night before, as Monica had suggested, but that form did change some of the questions, and there's a couple of other areas they needed to initial off on. So we have had all our customers go back in during the process. We worked the loans with the original app, but have gone in and had them adjust their new app because that new app had some add-ons like the idle loan, which a lot of people haven't even received notification whether they're approved or not. But there's some other spots that were on there that did change on that form.
Okay, fantastic. Good ad. All right. And what are they looking at for the process? Is the entire process online? Do they start there? Do they start through an SBA form or through your own bank's form? I mean, where would you tell people to begin this process? Who would like to tackle that?
This is Russ. I can tackle that one. What we have asked people to do is we're trying to kind of control the packet to help with the streamlined process. So the best thing I suggest is that the customers reach their banker and ask them how they want them to apply. We had put together a packet that had the proper forms, and in addition to some other things that we were going to need, in addition, not only the application, but what information that we wanted to see as far as supporting documentation for the payroll justification, and if we needed any other additional forms for CIP purposes, or if we needed beneficial owner information. But we tried to control it and have it to where we can get that entire package together and submit it back to us. We've had some people that they've gone on ours and downloaded it off our website, or we've emailed it to them. And if you send that packet in, it makes it easier for the lenders to be able to process that package entirely. For example, when this thing first came out, literally the evening of the 2nd, we were having people just send us electronic forms of the application with no data. And, Friday morning, we're supposed to be getting in and doing all these enters into the eTran system, and you don't have any of the information that you need. So that really created a delay for people who were just sending in the applications and not contacting the lender directly. And what caused more chaos was that they would send in the application, and then their accountant may send in 5 or 6 different emails with, secure emails with their financial information that then you'd have to go back in and pull into a queue, try and get it matched up with the application. So that in its entirety created a huge delay for customers, because you had to take time to assemble all those when you could have been inputting the data into the E-Trans system. So I would recommend contacting your banker and find out what's their process for applying.
Okay. Oh,
I think that's good advice.
fantastic.
I may echo on that, and it may be a future question. I might be jumping ahead, so you can stop me. But I agree. I think that a lot of folks don't have bankers. I know we always talk about making sure you have a good partner for banking. You may not see the reason now, and I think those are your exact words that you use. But this would be a good example of having a banker. We have an online portal that I know on Friday when the program came out, we were getting 5 applications a minute. And so those customers still, some of them still haven't been contacted yet. They're just stuck in a queue. Some of them they even did it before the third. And so they've got applications that are incorrect, sitting in a queue waiting to be worked. If that's you, I think it's okay at this point to try and contact, if you do have a banker, even somebody you've talked to before, reach out to them directly and let them know what's happened, that you've submitted an application you're in a queue, you don't know what to do. See if you can't be proactive. Like I said, having that application ready, the new one, some additional information that you need is supporting payroll information. And so you're going to ask for it. So even if they didn't ask for it initially, you need to have that. If you have employees, you have tax forms, 941 for payroll tax. That's a great form to use. If you're a sole proprietor, your Schedule C, just supporting documentation that you use to get your calculation. So if you came up with a number, what did you use? The banker's not going to be able to calculate every single person's numbers, but we do have to validate every single person's numbers. So if you make that easy on us, it goes fast. So make sure you have that documentation ready. Again, be proactive. If you want to reach out to an individual banker and let them know what happened, that's great. They can pull you out of that queue and process it. Or whoever gets to you first. If they can get to you first, great. If somebody from the queue calls you and says, we're ready to go, you've got 2 people working for you. So just make sure you're advocating for yourself, reaching out to somebody, but working with a banker specifically that knows you, has talked to you, is probably your best bet if it is an option.
Fantastic. And actually, we've got a question about documentation a little bit further on, but since we're tackling that, why don't we flesh that out? What else? I mean, so you mentioned the payroll and the 941 to come up with that average payroll for the PPP that we're gonna ask for 2.5 months of that typical payroll. So that's fantastic. Schedule C, and thank you for clarifying something, because there's confusion around the country whether just like a sole proprietor or somebody can even do this. But yes, it is based on their income, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is their salary. So you guys are ahead of believe me, ahead of about half the country. The other half of the country is confused and thinks they're left out of this, and they're really not.
No.
But unfortunately, they're getting some bad information from some people. But what else? I mean, so obviously the app that you mentioned, the newer app. What else should they generally be ready to provide? I mean, do you need a personal financial statement, for example?
No, and I'm sure everybody can kind of add on to this. I can tell you there's some things that are not on the application that make our life so much easier. So if you, again, want to be proactive, the SBA site is asking for the full zip code. And I don't mean the 6 digits that everybody knows, but that extra +4 digits is something that we're having to look up on every single application, including the business and all the guarantor, all the owner's information. So if you can provide that, it goes so quick.
Wow.
The NAICS code is also the industry code. It's on your tax return under industry code. It's a 6-digit number that describes the industry you're in. Again, that's one less thing we'd have to look up, because we do have to have that. So have that ready. And then your business start date. And that is even for sole proprietors. That's even for independent contractors. It still needs a business start date. And so those are just little things that nobody knows until we get into it that we're really going to need. But that really speeds up the process. If those things are nice and neat in the body of an email that says, these are my industry code, my start date, and here are the last 4 digits on each of our zip codes. Those people I want to, virtually give a hug to, because that makes a difference between an application taking about 10 minutes to process versus taking an hour and a half to process. Those things are just very helpful. I know there's more that we need, so I'm going to defer on for the other bankers to chime in on additional documentation.
Yeah, Vince and Russ, what else are you seeing generally? I mean, in the process?
This is Russ. I agree with Monica. That's the things that we found. We were very familiar with the E-Tran system as an active SBA lender. So none of that was on any of that. So we had to physically look that up. So yeah, I agree with her wholeheartedly. The other side of that too, depending if you're a non-bank customer that you're applying to a bank that you don't normally do banking with because your bank or credit union does not do SBA loans, the banks are still required to do CIP information. So again, what that means is you're going to have to collect some information on the business, articles of good standing, certificate of good standing, business entity search, in addition to some of that. And then, knowing who the owners are. The SBA site said, you had to come up with 90% of ownership. So you had to kind of work through that to at least put who the potential partners are, or even though there's no guarantors, you still had to come up with about 90% to get kind of through that on some of those areas. And then the affiliates, if you have affiliate businesses, provide your list of affiliates. That's part of that application process.
Okay.
And I'll echo on that, Russ. You mentioned ownership, so thank you for that. The application says list all owners 20% or more. And so a lot of folks say, oh, I'm the majority owner, and they put their 57% ownership in there. We actually have to have ownership address, social, and percentage of ownership up to 90% ownership. So if somebody owns a 1% or 2%, you can leave them off, but we have to make up 90% of it. Application is not clear. So you've probably done what the application requires, but the bank's definitely going to need additional information.
Okay, fantastic. How about just repayment ability? I mean, a lot of times right now, tomorrow was tax day. They've bumped that up a little bit. Thank God, because I haven't done mine. But a lot of people haven't done their taxes for 2019. I mean, all this got kind of a mess. So what do they need to do to prove repayment? If they don't have taxes, can they use a P&L?
Vince, take that one.
Yeah.
I'll chime in. From what I've seen, they do not have to show the ability to repay the P3 loan. Strictly based on payroll. I could be wrong on this, but from everything that we've seen on guidance from Nagel, there hasn't been any ability to show that you repay. It's strictly based off payroll and that. So that's kind of the nice thing about the program is there's no real true underwriting happening with this particular loan. It's a lot of it's certification on the borrower itself. So if you can document the payroll, I think Monica and Russ both mentioned some of the documentation that's needed there, but just about documenting what you've done in payroll. Mm-hmm. For the forgiveness part, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions on that. We'll get into that later, but that's just make sure you're documenting everything. But as far as I've seen, there's no ability, you do not have to prove that you have the ability to repay the loan.
Yeah, I agree. The 941s are your quarterly tax forms. And so you don't have to have your taxes complete to have those. You've paid your payroll taxes if you have those. Those are a great form. A lot of the third-party payroll providers, so I'm trying to think of a few of the names, but a lot of them have provided forms that are a summary of payroll. They even do the averages and the calculations for you. We are accepting those. So they can submit those in. If you are a sole proprietor and you have a profit and loss, but you don't have your tax returns done, we can take your net income from your profit and loss. Again, like Vince said, it's stated, it's the borrower's responsibility to get everything right. It's just the bankers to validate it. So we're making sure your math is right. We're making sure where you got your numbers from is a legitimate source. But other than that, it's on the borrower to present that information. So those are the things that we're accepting. Russ, if I forgot anything, if you want to chime in.
I think you pretty much covered most of it. Anything that they could use supporting and like a Paycor. I think Paycor is one of those payment processors, or ADP. They do payroll stuff. I've had several people say, should I open up an account and just run everything through there? I will tell you, at least in my mind, I would not have time to go through and look at every transaction that you did on your account and try and validate it. There's just would not be enough time to do that. And that would be difficult to do. And because you'd have to look up every item on there to see what was processed. So I think going back to whatever you can provide from either your payroll company or, your 941s, because, if it's through May and June, you'll have third quarter ending numbers to help support that.
Fabulous. That's fantastic. So very much like the idle loan, which really only asks for two numbers, your sales and your COGS. This is pretty light on the financials. That's fantastic news. And to that end, now, okay, we know this isn't happening as quickly as possible. Loans are just being made now. People are just starting. We heard about a few people getting their idle advance. But I mean, to put things into perspective, a traditional commercial loan in Kansas City is typically like 72 days. This is regulated to close within, is it 10? What's the timing on this, if somebody would like to share?
Yeah, it's,
This is right.
Yeah.
go ahead, Russ.
Oh, I was going to say, they just released last week, I think it was on the 11th, when they determined that the SBA determined what forms we could use to actually type these loans on.
Yep.
Said the loans had to be closed 10 calendar days from the date the loan was approved on the SBA site. They had to be funded on that 10 days. So.
Correct.
So I mean, it feels slow to people, but this is a sea change, man. This is fast. In terms of commercial loans, a lot of times people, their entire experience for getting a loan is they bought a car and they went into the little glass box in the dealership, and 45 minutes later they came out and they're broke, but they got the loan.
Right.
And a business loan just isn't like that. It's over 2 months, and these things are going to be down to 10 days. So yeah, the banks are being asked to do a lot very, very quickly in this case.
Yeah.
A typical SBA loan, to your point, John, will be anywhere from 45 to 90 days, depending on the structure of the loan and what's involved if there's real estate. So
Oof.
although it may seem very frustrating from a client perspective, the speed of what's happening with the SBA loans, this is really pretty much unprecedented pace for this type of SBA loan. It's really unheard of. So while on the surface it does seem a little frustrating, I will tell you from just past experience that this is really phenomenal what we're seeing right now. And I don't know if the other bankers feel that way, but
Yeah.
it's, it's unheard of from what we've seen.
Sure.
I agree. And we've had to come together as a banking community and figure things out. I know we're talking about, what our bank's doing, what other banks are doing. So yeah, I agree with all the gentlemen. I wouldn't mind unless you need to move on to another question, chiming in a little bit regarding the process.
Yeah, go for it. No, it's important.
Okay. So obviously, a banker needs to pick up the application. And once that happens, it's very, very quick, at least for our bank. So we, as a banker on the front line, we get the application, we validate the information. So if a banker is reaching out to you with questions, it is extremely time sensitive. And so please be as prompt as you can. I try and let my folks know, hey, I'm going to work on yours today. What's the best phone number to reach you at? Just so we're working together as a team. But everything stops until we get that information. And if we have to move on to somebody else, it's when we can get back to it. So once we get that, we just validate everything. So we're looking through the application, making sure we've got the zip, the industry code, the start date, all those things, so that when the person goes to input it, they don't need to look for anything else. So we approve it, we send it on for input. It's in a shorter queue. So it takes for us about a day and a half for it to get inputted. But when they input it into the SBA system, at the end of input, instantaneously, it is approved through the SBA. Unless they've checkmarked something that would disqualify them from the loan, and we would have probably caught that by then. It's when they're inputting it, it's an instant approval. And then we move them to the approval queue. And then at that point, we're working on loan documentation and funding. So it's really a short process with not that many hands involved in it. So again, if somebody's reaching out to you saying, I'm looking at your application now, get back to them pronto, because if they have to move on, it's going to be hard to get back to it.
Fabulous. I mean, we got over 100, we have exactly 100 people listening. I think they're getting a sense that there are pros here at the banks that know this process, that have worked with the SBA for years and really can shepherd these things through. Is there anything any other challenges? Is there anything that you're awaiting now from the SBA Okay. I see Monica shaking her head. All right, bring it.
Well, we have a lot of people that are starting to get their funds, and I'm sure Russ can probably talk to this as well. So a lot of people are getting their funds, and then they're saying, how do we track this? What do we do? What forms do we need? What can we use this on? We don't have a guidance for that. We just have the interim final guidance that's very vague. We know that it can be used on obviously your payroll. 75% of it has to be payroll. And then beyond that, rent payments is fine. Mortgage interest on your commercial mortgage loan, interest on a commercial loan taking out before February 15th, and then approved utilities. And so that's also kind of vague. So that's frustrating for us because it's frustrating for our clients. And we're just trying to tell people, keep the best records you've ever kept of your life. And as soon as we hear, we'll let you know. But, knowing that this program came out on a Friday and we got our interim guidance on Thursday evening, I'm a little nervous as to when we're going to get that information. So that's probably our biggest frustration. But I'll let you guys talk about that.
Yeah, Russ.
This is Russ. I agree with Monica. The flow of information for bankers, it's trickling down very slow, which makes it difficult for us to provide the answers to our clients that they want and need, and we want to provide. We just don't have the true guidance that we need to be able to tell them. So it's a changing process every day for us. I think that the FDIC had put out their adjusted Q&A back-to-back days because they had things that they needed to amend, and we're trying to keep up on all the changes as they roll out. So I would ask, customers, to be patient. We're in the same boat as you. We're putting out the same information that we're receiving, and then there's a lot of information that's coming out on these programs from a lot of different sources that they've maybe picked up, but on the backside of it, those processes haven't hit the bank yet. Mm-hmm. And so banks don't know how to either work through that, or they're waiting for additional guidance from the SBA on how to proceed with some of those. So that's been a big challenge.
I know, what was it, four business days ago, we didn't even know if the bank was going to use their own note or SBA provided note. And typically with an SBA loan, there'll be a SBA loan authorization as well. And that guidance just came down a few days ago that you do not need the SBA authorization. So to the other bankers' points, I mean, it's literally changing daily. Mm-hmm. And sometimes by the hour, you'll see updates within the same day. So it is a very fluid, it's very fluid right now.
Sure.
It is. Our fellow bankers are joking because our most common thing we say is, I don't know. And so we're given the best guidance we can, but there's some areas that we're not comfortable giving guidance on because the impact would be severe. So if you've got a banker that's different than another banker, just kind of figure out their knowledge level and who you're comfortable with. Do your own research as well. We had a lot of questions early on about 1099 employees and those kinds of things. And so, we never want to put a customer in a position where they're stuck owing us at the end on an 18-month term. So, I know particularly I'm going to say, let's use our best judgment. We're not comfortable doing this. And if somebody says, well, this other bank will do it, then I say, well, then if that's what you want to do, but we're really wanting to look out for the interest of our customers. And because we don't have clear guidance on some areas, it's a little more gray, we're going to side on conservative because we want to make sure our customers aren't stuck with the big chunk of money they owe at the end of the day.
Thank you. Okay.
And I would concur with Monica. This is Russ.
All right. Thanks, Russ and Vince. So, okay, quick question for you. So you guys know your stuff here. We're having some clients go to their banks and being basically turned away, or their banks don't have the level of knowledge that you have. I mean, what should someone do if they don't have that banking relationship already? And Vince and Monica, you have heard me talk about that in class every time I introduce you, that even if you don't need a loan right now, have a relationship with a banker, because you never know what's going to happen. And it might be a bad thing like this, or it might be a weather event. Or I remember in Mission, they closed down Johnson Drive for like a year, for crying out loud, and people needed working capital there. Or it could be a good thing. They just get a whopper of a big contract and they need some working capital for that. But what's your advice if someone has to turn to a bank that they've never dealt with before?
So I'll start, but you guys echo on that. I've gotten that a lot. I've gotten people that I've visited with in the past, and they say, I don't know if you remember me, but I went to my bank. I know there's a certain big bank in town that says we're no longer accepting applications. So there are a lot of businesses out there that are affected by not having a place to go. So my I guess comment to them is figure out a bank that does know what they're doing. Make sure you're comfortable. There's a couple banks that say that they do. This is new to them. They're doing the best that they can. So talk to somebody if you feel like they have a good grasp of it. Move forward. You do not have to have an account. At least not with us. Some banks you do. The kicker is there's an extra step if you don't bank at that bank. You do have to get your ID. We have to verify you. It's just banking regulations. We have to make sure we understand and know who you are and your business. So I thought my other second comment is if it is time to change banks, you were thinking about it anyway, and there's a bank that's willing to help you versus one that you're currently at that isn't. It might be a good time to do all that at once and get it taken care of as well. So again, you don't have to, but there is some extra steps in there. But I'd go someplace where somebody has a realistic time frame when they can get it entered. I think the expectation is the money's going to run out by the end of the week. So if you have waited, then don't wait any longer. Make sure you get your ducks in a row. If somebody was to email me tomorrow and say, here's my complete packet and everything's in there, I've got a small queue that I'm working, but I see a complete packet, I get excited, and I can keep going down until I have a complete one, and I work on those. So.
And that leads to one of our biggest questions. I mean, what is your consensus with regard to these PPP funds running out? I mean, it's 350 billion, but what are you hearing and from where?
It's all but guaranteed to run out by the end of the week. I don't want to panic, but based on the volume and the initial funding that they've seen, it will probably end up being funded completely by the end of the week. Obviously, there's talks in Washington right now about additional funding, which I believe will happen. There's too much demand out there, too many businesses out there that were not able to take advantage of the program in time. And to Monica's point, I think everybody's seeing the value of having a good relationship with your banker. It's a lot of people do not want to spend time, but I think you're seeing that value, especially right now. And to piggyback on her comments, if you're working with a bank that doesn't understand the process, or they may not have ever been involved with SBA loans, I would say probably at this time is a good time to reevaluate your banking relationship and look at subject matter experts, because you never know what's going to happen down the road.
Absolutely.
I would agree with that. This is Russ, and our bank has taken a position. We're a community bank, and we're here for our community members. So we have not turned away anyone in our area for the PPP loan. I know there's other places that said they're going to do the packages for their customers first, and then they'll take anything after. We have done it as a first come, first serve type because, we're all community, and we're a community bank, and that's what we're there for. But I can tell you to piggyback on that, we've had numerous customers that have banked elsewhere, whether it's been a credit union or it's been another bank or in another area or even local, that said, you know what, this is the time I just need to make a change, because if I can't get all my needs taken care of, I need to be someplace that can take care of me. And so we've actually have seen the increase in people that have wanted to move over and open up, not just their business account, but their personal relationships too. And I think that's part of what being a community banker is like. Monica had made mention, earlier, that's what makes a community, and having that community banker that you can go to for everything is definitely shown its value. And I think people will realize that.
I agree.
Okay, fantastic. We are rocking through these. We're going to get to the questions that have been submitted in just a few moments. I want to make sure we got everything. Okay, so if a borrower needs help with this process, who do you suggest? I mean, I may have mentioned in an earlier webinar, there's over 1,000 accountants in the KC metro area, for example. You finding that they're familiar with this, or certainly familiar enough with the type of documents that they need to provide to the bank?
I think for what I've seen, it's kind of like the spread with bankers. I think some accountants are really eager and jumping in and helping their clients. They're on top of it, and some of them don't want to be bothered with it. So I think you're getting it all over the board. Hopefully, yours is one that's engaged in helping. There's a couple of times when clients will come my way and they have so many questions about their own personal financials that I do guide them back to their CPA. I just provide an email with these are the specific things we need, but I have no way of getting those. And so I say, just contact your CPA and get these things. And so a lot of them have been engaged. We've got some great ones in town. And so they've done a really nice job. But yeah, I think I found that most of them are aware of it. Most of them have to be because everybody's calling, and in most cases they're helpful.
Okay, fantastic. And we're here as well, but there's just so many more of them. You know, in our office, there's 3 of us, and like I said, over 1,000 accountants. So just a bandwidth thing. We're happy to help. I do want to just revisit. Sorry, go for it.
Hey, John, I think there is a resource out there that I think is helpful that maybe some people aren't thinking about is your CFOs for hire. There. You know, they're temporary or can be, but they do have capacity out there to help in situations like this, and it may be a good time to look at evaluate your whole story as a business. So they may be somebody that you may want to reach out to as well.
Yeah, and cash flow is so incredibly important this time, more than almost any other time, when there's so little coming in and still a lot of stuff going out. Not a bad time to get that in hand. I just want to revisit this really quickly, just to make sure we didn't miss anything. You guys mentioned what they would need to verify the payroll, because it's really up to the applicant to come up with that ask, right? The loan amount. You guys don't want to calculate that. So the 941, the payroll records that are going into the IRS, you mentioned ADP. Is there anything else that you'd like to see that would help with that to verify that?
I mean, those are ideal. And so it just depends on the entity and what they're asking for. If it's a contract employee, a 1099 would be great because contract employees started on Friday. And just a copy of the 1099, we can do the simple math. We're just asking that you provide, we have a calculator that we're giving folks, and so they can do the calculation and send that with their forms, or just type it out and say, I used the total of my 941s, I used the total of my payroll report, it's this number, I've subtracted this, I multiplied by this, and this is how we got it. So just as long as there's no guessing game, because when we have to guess, we have to start, it just takes time. We have to search for the numbers and find it and do the math. And then when my math doesn't match your math, then I have to call you. So take that question mark out and just let us know. And if you don't know, maybe what you have isn't what I'm saying, and maybe you have something different, then feel free to reach out and ask. And we're happy. I know your banker's happy to tell you what they can accept.
Okay, fantastic. Now I want to shift gears a little bit before we get into the Q&A, because there's something out there which could be a lifeline, and it's not getting the same amount of press as the PPP, and that's the debt relief program. And so this is a kind of a 2-part question for any of you, any or all, because is there anything that, for example, our clients have to do? Is there anything that they have to do? And then I also want to talk about the future, because, I'm selling this to some of my clients. I've got a client that wants to buy a business, and obviously, this week, no, this is like going to an ER and asking for Botox. It's like, no, we're not going to do that right now. But my gosh, if we start to turn the corner in a few weeks or a few months, this deal goes through the September 27th. And in class tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the concept that there's a Chinese character that's the same thing for the dual concepts of crisis or danger and opportunity. And this is really it. I mean, we've got a chance to fund some businesses coming out of this. So what would you like to tell people about that? What do they need to do, and what's the realistic expectation of getting these loans going forward?
I can start. So if you have an existing SBA loan, you're in great shape. So for 7A loans, express loans, if you don't know, you are not going to be required to make your payments for the next 6 months. The SBA is making principal and interest payments for you. If you have a 504 loan, so you purchased a piece of property, you built something, large machinery, a 504 loan, then the portion of the loan that's with the certified development company, there's a couple of those in town, that's the part that's forgiven. The bank part isn't, but you can talk to your bank about deferrals of that. So you can have just interest only payments or whatnot. No action required by you. The banks are supposed to be submitting in information to the SBA, and the SBA's payments should be starting in May is what the consensus is that starting in May, they're making those payments. So as of right now, you shouldn't have to make a payment. If you're being asked to make a payment, contact your bank. There's a way we can defer it until that payment comes through. If you can make your payments and you want to, that's fine, but you're not supposed to have to make those payments. And then I don't know if somebody wants to take it. I can talk, but if somebody else wants to talk about the new loans.
Yeah, what about a brand new loan after we get past this a little bit? Go, Russ.
Well, I was just going to piggyback on Monica's statement on there. Banks that have the unilateral authority to do the 6 months of deferrals for existing SBA loans that are in good standing, and that could be principal and interest, or it can be just interest. But on the payment, the one where they're going to make the actual payments, to my knowledge, and Monica, if you have something that's out there more different than what just what's been out on the one email the SBA sent out or what's on their website, the specifics of that debt relief and how that's going to work, and because we have not seen any guidelines from the SBA on how that's going to work, especially if you've already had clients that are in 6 months of deferrals from the get-go, and is that going to be reimbursed or so? I would reach out to either of the panelists if you have that information. That would be good to see.
Yeah, I know I've read some stuff. I can't tell you even right now the source. I know I read a lot from Nagel and then a lot from even the Coleman report. So those are good resources. But to my knowledge at this point, if somebody's on a deferral already, that you go ahead and honor that deferral, and then the payments for the SBA will be applied following that. So I know I had a couple right out the gate that said, oof, if there's any way we cannot make our payments. So we put them on 90-day deferrals. We're going to go ahead and honor the 90-day deferrals. And then on top of that, the SBA guidance was, don't change your current deferral. Go ahead and honor that. We'll make the next 6 months payments after that. So I have some customers that aren't making payments for 9 months. Because we're honoring that deferral. I think right now the consensus is, since we know it's coming, maybe we do a 30-day deferral and then we go ahead and do the 6 month. And that way we have the option at the end, if they still need a deferral in 6 months or 7 months, then we can still have that additional option to defer at that point in time. But if they can have their principal and interest paid, that's what we want to do first. So I can comment on that. And then I did hear something yesterday, probably more on the skeptical, people assuming side, but that it should start in May, and that the bankers are submitting in their monthly reports with their SBA loans, and that's how they'll gather that information.
I did see guidance from Nagel on that, and you're exactly right on your comments there, and that's what Nagel has presented to the bankers on that. So you're exactly right. That is a overlooked portion of the CARES Act that I don't think a lot of people understand how big of an impact that is to clients. Imagine as an individual that you get 6 months of mortgage payments just paid for you. So as an individual, just kind of put it into that perspective. And so your businesses are allowed to reallocate those funds however needed. I think this is a big area that's overlooked, and the business don't have to do anything. So yeah. It's great. It's a big part of the act that I think a lot of people that hasn't been getting a lot of press, and it should.
Agreed. And it's also on new loans taken out, and John, correct me or let me know the dates, but I think it's through the 30th of June, new SBA loans. And so if you have been thinking about something, and again, this week's probably not the right week, but getting that together. So it's loans taken out from the beginning of this year or this period of time till, correct me, June 30th. They're honoring that 6 months. So I know I've got one that's approved. We're just waiting on the paperwork. And so that customer's going to probably close next week on an SBA loan, and they don't have to make a payment for 6 months. So that's kind of a bonus that they get to take advantage of.
Yeah, we had heard originally September 27th, but they might have.
That might
circled
be right.
back well, they might have said, let's go with yours because I'd rather tell people earlier, and if it gets extended because things do change. But what a tremendous opportunity! And I realize right now it can't be your focus.
No,
And
we've kind of put things on hold for at least another week or so.
Yeah, but look, they can be working on their business plan. They can be polishing their projections. They can be getting their documentation in order, right? So that when they come to you, they're a very qualified applicant for that.
Mhm.
And
And I think one thing to note for new loans right now, if anybody's considering that, is be able to talk about how this has impacted you or would impact the industry you're wanting to enter into, and how are you going to overcome that. And so think about like childcare services, or is there an insurance that you can get that disaster insurance or something. So you may be asked stuff that you weren't ever asked before, or you wouldn't have been asked previously, but now that banks are kind of going through this with their clients, and if it's an industry that's been dramatically impacted, be ready to talk about what are you going to do if this happens again in the fall or something's going on.
Sure. Weather related. It could be anything really.
Anything,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right. So we've used up 3/4 of the hour and we have 28 questions, but people have been upvoting them. And so I'm going to dive into that. I know this first person. Can you talk about the forgiveness of the loan? One question about, Monica's already smiling. One question about this is the lender looks at our 8-week period. We will only have 3 pay periods that will actually be paid during the 8-week period. I see that as an issue for the compensation forgiveness aspect. Could you talk about how they have to, what's the SBA telling them about how they have to dole out this payroll? Timing?
We have zero guidance yet, and I apologize. I hate that answer, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. They do have to have people rehired by June 30th. All right.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that the 8 weeks has to conclude by June 30th, right?
It's the day that you get the funding that starts your 8-week period of time.
Right. That's
So that's correct. And I think another question that you didn't ask, but that may be in there, or maybe part of that, is it doesn't have to be the same person. So if John worked for you before and John's gone, it can be Susie. It's just positions with the company. So full-time position, or positions, not even full-time. If you had 8 employees, you need to have 8 employees. It doesn't mean that it's the same 8 employees. So maybe I had a lady who has a clothing type store, and she said, I need to reallocate my resources. I'd rather hire somebody better at X, Y, and Z. Previously I had, them good at this, but this is what I need now. And I said, that's fine. It's just full-time positions. So even if it's not the same people or not, I say, keep saying full-time. It's not necessarily full-time, but positions. It doesn't have to be the same position.
Headcount. Yeah. I appreciate you using the
Fair
word
point.
John as the example of the person you're going to can and that thanks.
Yeah. That was just all subliminal.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Vince and Russ, any thoughts on the forgiveness?
Yeah, this is Russ. And some of the provisions that reduce the amount that may be forgiven, if you look at kind of the rules, it says number of staff, your loan forgiveness will be reduced if you decrease your full-time employee headcount, which what Monica was referring to, during an 8-week covered period when compared to the other periods in either 2019 or 2020. Then a next one be level of payroll. Your loan forgiveness will be reduced if you decrease salary and wages by more than 25% for any employee that made less than $100,000 annualized in 2019. And then you have until June 30th, 2020 to restore your full-time employment and salary levels for any changes made between February 15, 2020 and April 26, 2020.
Okay. All right. And just to pound home one point, the clock starts. I mean, they're supposed to be starting that 8-week period that will be forgiven immediately after the loan's closed, right?
Yep,
That's my
correct.
understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That is correct.
Okay. Because we have some people who are like, well, if I apply right now, and my God, if they're running out of money, I need to apply right now, but I don't want my people back until it gets better. No, that's not the point. The point is to get your people back, even if it's not better, and have them employed, right?
Yeah. I think honestly, and this is my opinion, not speaking on behalf of anyone, is the alternative is unemployment and just keeping people employed at a job, holding a spot for them, paying them in the meantime, keeping them off unemployment. So if that question is in there, you can't do both. So once you have those funds, you need to notify the unemployment office that they're no longer unemployed. But the goal is to pay people. So I've got some that are medical, non-essential medical practices, those kinds of things. And they're like, well, we want to wait till we're open back up again. It makes more sense to have the money then. Well, the money may not be there. I understand the point. The money may not be there. Hopefully we are able to open up within the next 8 weeks, but the purpose is to get people paid through their employer.
Yeah, and as fast as
And-
possible.
And I think, this is Russ, I think that's really key also because, you know, as employers, it's so much more expensive and timely to try and hire new staff and bring them in and teach them what you need to teach them to operate your business. So this is kind of a retainage deal too, to where you can keep people on and not have to worry about trying to go find somebody else and then train them up to speed. So it's, to me, it's key in that area.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you all.
John, there's one thing I wanted to mention on the forgiveness. So there's a caveat within the forgiveness program that you do have to use 75% of the funding on payroll costs by SBA definition, because you can use the other funds for other things, as we've seen previously, such as rent, utilities. So it's going to be really important to make sure that you use 75% of those funds on their definition of payroll to make sure that you'll be able for the forgiveness, and it will be reduced by that amount is what we're seeing now. How they're calculating that, we don't know yet, but they will reduce the forgiveness amount.
And John, I've had somebody ask, and this may be a question in there, well, you know, hey, this is a 1% loan. I want to use it on something completely different. And the government's had some pretty harsh and direct words that says, if you intentionally use this for intended purposes different than, or non-intended purposes, there's going to be consequences. Now, I don't know what those consequences are, but I don't think that I'd want to find out. So if you blatantly, you know, used it and bought something or did something that you shouldn't have, then I would expect that somehow, some way, you know, that could come back. So I wouldn't go in with that intention. Now, if you spend 60% on payroll and you spent the rest on, you know, rent or whatnot, then, you know, obviously there's a portion that won't be forgiven, and that's okay. That obviously, you know, you needed to use it for what you needed to use it for. It wasn't intended, you know, you didn't mean to do that. So I think you're okay, but yeah, I wouldn't go out and buy a big piece of equipment or something with it.
Yeah, you're not going to jail, but you're not going to get it forgiven to the full extent. And if you
And
play
they
by the
use harsh
rules,
enough words that there may be other repercussions too. And I wouldn't want to see somebody have that happen.
sure. Yeah, and as long as they play by the rules, they spend it on essentially 8 weeks of payroll, and to Vince's point, they can spend 25% of the loan proceeds on other normal business expenses. Yeah, it
Right.
should be forgiven. So fabulous. Let's see. Will you be covering the application process for the self-employed or LLC members to be able to apply for the PPP? I understand it was open to apply on Friday, but as of today, I don't know if the application or local banks have the information they need to accept the applications.
Yep, we're doing them now. So application, same application, proof of your income. So again, if it's a Schedule C, we use your net income. We divide that net income number by 12 and multiply by 2.5. You can use the profit and loss if your returns aren't done. If you're a contract employee, we'll use your 1099. Again, divide by 12, multiply it by 2.5. Hopefully that answered that question in full.
Yeah, and by the way, in 30
And we're doing the
seconds-
same.
Go ahead, Russ.
We're doing the same as Monica using those. So we're up and running with them too.
This is why we appreciate you three. That was more clarity than we've heard in a week and a half from every level. I mean, that's just we appreciate you more than you can possibly know, because there's LLCs aren't even mentioned in the thing in the law. I did a search, and because it's a disregarded entity in terms of taxes, they didn't write anything about it. And man, 80% of my clients are LLCs.
Yeah,
So,
and it does go by, yes, you check mark the box, I'm an LLC, because that one's often checked wrong, but it does go by how you file your taxes. And so if, you know, you have a Schedule C, then that's what we use, and so on and so forth. So it will make a difference on the paperwork that we need to gather, but absolutely we can help LLCs.
Fantastic. That's great news. Okay, so is it permissible to apply for the PPP from 2 or more different banks? We know only one loan can be accepted, but is it fine to apply at multiple places? That's a good question.
I mean, unless you applied, like, I think about the folks at that one to be unnamed large bank and they're lost in the system. I would go reapply at that point. But if you are actively engaged with a banker at two different banks, then I don't know that I see the benefit of that. You guys could definitely give me your opinion on that. But, you know, if you think you're lost somewhere in a queue, then I would reach out to somebody else. Just make sure you let somebody know, the second bank, that you've already been taken care of, and they can take you off that list, because, you know, you're sitting in somebody's queue somewhere is something they need to work on or get to. So just let them know that you've already gotten taken care of.
Yeah, and you certainly can't
This,
close
this
them.
is Russ.
Go for it, Russ.
Right. This is Russ on the ABA FAQ. The question came up, why are borrowers limited to one PPP loan? And it basically, the SBA and Treasury determine that one loan per borrower limitation is necessary to ensure that as many eligible borrowers as possible may attain a PPP loan. The limitation also helps advance Congress' goal of keeping workers paid and employed across the United States. So it's just the one.
Mm-hmm. And to echo on that, if somebody has, and I've got a client that has two separate businesses, one has 18 employees, one has 14 employees, separate EIN, tax identification number, we have one for each of them. So it's per tax ID number, not per individual that's happened to be an owner on both. So just to clarify that question, so if you have more than one business that flows through separate returns, then you can apply for one for each of them, just one per business.
Fantastic. Okay. Let's see. Okay, another point of confusion. Will wages paid to an owner be forgiven in addition to payroll?
It depends. If the owner is paid strictly with distributions, those aren't taxable. And so what we're looking at right now is income to an owner that's paid through a W-2, income through an owner. If they file through a Schedule C, then we look at their net income because they're paying taxes on that the same way. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you are benefiting from not paying taxes on your income, then you're not going to benefit from a tax dollar infused program. So unfortunately, there's kind of a catch-22 on that. But if Russ or Vince wants to chime in additionally to that, that'd be great.
That is my understanding as well, is how most banks are looking at that. So I would agree with that.
Okay. A little off topic, but just in case you have any insight, we have a question apparently about the EIDL, the economic injury disaster loan. If I filled out all the EIDL assistance on the SBA.gov site on 3/21 and got a confirmation number, okay, that's a good sign. Is this valid when calling the SBA? The people answering the phone or tier 2 workers cannot look at anything. Is there a way to get in touch with a tier 1 employee? Do you have any insights on that? We understood.
They're just releasing, there's some information this morning that they're trying to get it to where you can track down your EIDL. So there should be some additional guidance on that. If it isn't out already today, it will be out. I did read that in an email this morning. Forgive me, I can't remember from where. I know that folks are just starting to get their EIDLs. They have changed the program in the air. The amount that was requested, and I won't have exact numbers, but we'll just say 300 and something billion was requested, and they had 17 billion set aside. So they have changed the amount they're funding. Everybody understood that within 3 days of applying, they're going to get $10,000 grant, which would have been beautiful, but that's not what's happening. They're adjusting it per employee. So the people that thought they were getting $10,000 potentially may get $1,000, which is a huge difference. So you should get that. I think I'll echo on that in case this is down the line. If you do get a grant, just the forgiveness part, the part that you don't have to pay back, when you go to apply for forgiveness on the PPP loan, so the interrelated in this area, it is our understanding at this time that you will have to subtract that amount. So if your PPP loan is $20,000 and you got a $10,000 grant, only $10,000 is going to be forgiven from the PPP loan, not the full 20. So keep that in mind when you're getting those grants, that if that's money that maybe you don't need right now, set that aside and you can pay off the PPP loan with that money.
There you go. Yeah, you can't double dip.
That is, yeah, Monica, that came out in the American Bankers Association Q&A, or Q&A on that too. So a lot of people have asked that question.
Yes, I did read that. Right. So that is where that came from.
Yes.
So we're going to keep going, but I'm also cognizant of your time. We'll try to get through a few of these other questions. We're hitting the end of the official hour. And if you guys need to head somewhere, we certainly understand. But if you can hang on for a little bit and answer a few of these, it's great stuff, because these are questions that all of our clients are asking. So
Sure.
I'll keep reading them, and, and we'll just keep it open for a little bit if that's okay.
Sure.
Who will determine if you? Yeah, this is a good one. Who will determine if you have met the requirements to have the loan forgiven, the 75% of proceeds for payroll, et cetera, at the end of the 8-week period? The bank or the SBA? And what documents were required? And I know you don't have guidance, but what's your gut?
So our understanding is we're not validating the documents we're validating that they're real, but we're passing all the information to the SBA for the SBA to determine what's forgiven. That's my understanding as of today. That's based on the interim guidance. There's nothing new. So my understanding is we are basically the middleman passing the information to the SBA for the SBA to make the determination.
Fabulous. Again, clarity, unknown clarity in this world of clouds. Do you list the owner or / president who is on the payroll and the number of employees on the application for the PPL and also the EIDL? They're technically not employees, but how will they be recognized to receive their paycheck from the PPP if not listed in the number of employees on the app?
To each their own. I've seen it all over the board. I've seen applications that it's the owners, the business, and they put 0 employees. I've seen them where they put 1. I would say if you're getting a paycheck that we are counting for PPP purposes, if it's net income or if it's through W-2 income, then yes, you are an employee and you count that. If you are only taking distributions and none of that's going to go back to you directly, then I would probably assume no. But again, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer to that.
Okay. Vince and Russ, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would second that.
Yeah, there's not been much other guidance.
Yeah, not yet. They just rolled out the guidance for basically the application process, and the forgiveness is still on its way.
Yeah.
Again, I think it was
Right.
Monica, you mentioned keep good records. I think you all did that. Keep really good records on how you spend this money, because you don't want to spend the different pools on the same thing.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Someone with employees. If a business is approved for the PPP, but they have furloughed their employees that have applied for unemployment, does this disqualify the company for the PPP?
Get them off it, hire them back, and have them not, apply for, unemployment. So tell them to come off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. This
With
entire
a different employee.
this entire thing is intended to get people reemployed and off of
Right.
unemployment.
They can't be on both. I think the
Yeah.
question ultimately was, can they be on both? No.
Fabulous. Just a quick question. Someone asked if we were going to cover the EIDL. Not within this, because remember the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loans, that's direct to the SBA. PPP, Paycheck Protection Program loans, are through your lender, through an SBA lender. They're backed by the SBA. But there are previous webinars that we've done that are on the state site, Kansas, KANSAS, SBDC.net/COVID, COVID-19, no hyphen in there. And we'll get that information out. There's a bunch of webinars. Family First, we've done webinars on the PPP, employee retention, tax credit, all that stuff is out there. If a business, we just did that one, sorry. I think we've covered this, but just to reiterate, hey, this is an accountant we know well. If a company is a sole proprietor, do they put the net profit plus any W-2 wages paid? Can they use 1099 miscellaneous subcontract payments as wages paid?
They can't use 1099 employee. They cannot count those as employees because those folks can't apply on their own. Now, if a business owner has received income to them through 1099s, then yes, but that would be a separate application from a business.
Yeah, it's almost two questions. If a company is a
It
sole
is.
proprietor, do they put in the net profit?
Yes.
Yes, right? Because that's how
And they
determine
are
the
capped at 100,000. It does not count the W-2 employees and them together as one number. But if the owner's net income is above 100,000, they fall into that cap. So their income is tracked separately. So it's 100,000 is a cap, and then whatever their W-2 employees are.
Okay. Awesome. Here's someone who is a startup, a two-member LLC with a technical product. We have been in business for over 2 years, but we do not pay ourselves except for periodic draws. Our last 2 years have been losses because we didn't start selling until May of 2019. Can I use documentation for the owner draws, bank statements, for example, to determine and document a PPP? Thank you.
Not if they're not paying taxes on that. If it's distributions, then it doesn't count. It does have to be through payroll.
Yeah, they do not pay ourselves except for periodic owner draws. And they have, let's see, do they have a loss?
So are they showing losses on their Schedule C? That would be the challenge for them if they're showing a loss.
Yeah, it says the last two, it's hard because I'm reading it to you. I can see it, but you can't see it. Our last 2 years have been losses because we didn't start selling until May of 2019. So can they use just the draws? So they had losses, but still took draws.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay. And I had a
Yeah,
question.
it's going to be
Oh, go ahead, Russ. Sorry.
This is Russ. I was going to say, again, most of this stuff has to be stuff that you can verify through the IRS of what you have filed or will file on taxes.
Correct.
And I had a question on behalf of a client. I promised them that I'd ask it. They bought a business. So to them, it's new. But Monica, you mentioned the business start date. What happens when someone buys a business that was existing? Can they use the prior P&L, the prior payroll information?
Did they buy it as a stock purchase or did they buy it as an asset-based purchase? So is their EIN new?
If they were my clients, they almost certainly bought it as an asset because I don't really like the baggage of
Right.
of an asset sale. So let's go with that. Let's say it was an asset sale.
So my opinion, which is all that it is I would say no, because the EIN is new, and there wouldn't be any records to their name. But I'm not saying that's the law. I'm saying that that would be probably where I would go with that. If they were in business February 15th, then yes, you can count that, but it would be from the date that they started prorated to the date. So if they were only open for a month this year, then we would divide it by the 1. And so on. And I would leave it to the other gentlemen if they want to chime in on their opinion on that as well.
Yeah, what do you think? Vince and Russ, an existing business, someone that bought an existing business. How would you handle
I
that?
think there's some gray area there because the purpose of the loan is definitely to keep the employees. I would imagine that they kept most of the employees bought the business. So the purpose of the loan is to get payroll. So if you've got the same full-time, that's a gray one there. I almost think that you almost have to get guidance from SBA on that particular question because there is so much gray. But my personal opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, is I believe that you should be able to show a line from the previous business if the is to keep the employees and the payroll going. I feel like personally that there should be some allowance there, but I think that's probably a question for either probably Nagel or APA or going directly to SBA on that one. I think there's a lot of gray area on that one.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's pretty specific.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And this is Russ. I would probably go directly to the SBA and ask them for clarification on that because it is such a gray area.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So somebody with a good accounting background. It sounds like there is no consideration for depreciation for a Schedule C. Is this true?
Oh, I did just see that.
Yes, that's. I don't believe there is for depreciation. Again, it's payroll and utility type and rent expenses, but depreciation, I have not seen anything with depreciation.
So I think we individually as a bank addressed it yesterday through an email. And again, I think we're just interpreting it the way that we can. So if it's a sole proprietor and they're using their Schedule C, we are allowing them to add back the depreciation. They are capped at 100,000 again, so they can add back the depreciation and interest, but that's our individual bank making a determination on the guidance that we have. So that's not necessarily a blanket rule that there's hard evidence on. That's just what we've chosen to do.
Fabulous. I'm going to answer a couple of these quick, and then you let me know if I'm wrong, because they're EIDL related. When should we receive the $10,000 EIDL funding? Monica, you had some good news that you heard about one hitting. So that
I've heard a couple
cool.
today, a couple hitting today. Yeah, several of them.
And do we have to apply for more than $10,000 to get the grant? Absolutely not. You hit the box. They'll judge it on the number of employees, and you don't have to take the, you don't have to accept the loan. You can be denied the loan. That advance grant is still yours. Are we able to apply for the EIDL grant while still in the application for the process for the PPP? Absolutely. But to Monica's point, you can't double dip. And so if you get a $50,000 PPP loan to keep your employees employed and use a little bit of on the business expenses that we talked about, they might forgive 40 if they gave you 10 because they already gave you the other 10. So they're not going to forgive it twice, right?
Correct.
So we'll get that one out. How long should it take the PPP loan to be approved? So we know it's 10 days after it's been approved. That has to be funded. The total process, hit that again. What do you think? If a client,
It depends on the backlog. So we're doing them in order at which we've received them. I think Russ mentioned they're doing the same thing. So we have people that went through online and there's a huge queue and we just got distributed out. Like they broke it out amongst the lenders yesterday. So I've got 9 new ones and that'll take me a day to knock 9 out. If everybody gets back to me in the same amount of time, that they're efficient. So just depends. If you can reach out to a banker and get somebody to work on it immediately, the process is pretty quick. But good luck because there's quite a bit of a queue. And some of these folks that have applied they applied 3-4 days ago. So we're still working on that.
And nine in a day. Oh my gosh. I mean, that is rocking and rolling.
Did 16 Saturday, so that was a good day. But yeah, that's a lot.
Wow, you are not familiar with the concept of banker hours.
Or sleep.
Or sleep. This is I like this question. If we want to hire at this time, God bless you, to bring on a new employee, what's a good way to handle this with the PPP? We have no payment history to show. Oh, so they have no payroll perhaps, and they want to expand. We'd like to cover that one.
I don't know that would apply to the PPP. I mean, power to you for hiring. If you've got money coming to you from the PPP for your income, maybe you can apply that and use it for that. So you get that extra, you get 2.5 times for your payroll period. So that extra 0.5 could be utilized to hire an employee instead of to utilities or anything else. So if I'm not sure that that's the question being asked, but if it is, then you could use that extra money to hire an employee.
I'm going to skip a couple of these EIDL questions because again, we're concentrating on the PPP because that's at the bank. This is good. 2 questions related to a sole proprietorship where I am the owner and the only employee. This is a new business as defined by the PPP. How is the loan amount calculated in regards to what expenses to deduct from revenue to determine net monthly income? Second, when proving how funds were used to get the loan forgiven, how does one do this when one has no payroll except himself? Wow. A new business is defined by the PPP. How's the loan amount calculated in regards to what expenses to deduct from revenue to determine net monthly income? Is it just the bottom line?
Mm-hmm. It's the bottom line. So if they're only open January, February, you do those 2 months, net income from a profit and loss for those 2 months and just use that divider instead of by 12 by 2.
Okay. And the second part, when proving how funds were used to get the loan forgiven, how does one do this when one has no one on payroll except the owner?
I mean, it's obviously going to go to them as well as any expenses that they might have, but we don't have any guidance on that. So
Gotcha.
I don't know officially.
That says, can you speak to what documentation is needed for a sole proprietor where I'm the only employee and I'm new enough, I don't have a tax return to use?
Ditto. Profit and loss.
Same thing. P&L. There you go. I like that. And we're going to send out what's remaining of these questions to you guys as well. You might want to divide and conquer a few of these. Oops, I just did that one. As a sole proprietor who only takes a member draw at random times, no set frequency, how do you calculate sole proprietor payout for the PPP loan? So same idea, right? PPP.
Net income.
P&L. Yeah, net income for the year. Figure out what a month is and 2.5 times that, right?
Yep.
Okay. I like this. Nonprofits do not have owners. What's the best approach for us in filling out the ownership portion of the application? There's a good one.
On the application, it states whether or not it's a nonprofit. So in that case, it's assumed that there's no owners on that. So there's nothing else you need to do on that. I know there's some contact information on there. But yeah, there is a portion on the application that does state whether or not it's a nonprofit.
Nice. Thank you, Vince.
Russ, I haven't myself completed one for nonprofit. Have you? And if so, when you're entering it to eTran, is there anything that you're needing?
I think, again, it's the same information when you're inputting. You need whoever that sole prop is to get to, and you're showing them at 100%. So, because you have to show at least 90. So we're getting information on the individual and inputting it into the eTran system.
And on a
Does that answer your
nonprofit,
question?
what about on a nonprofit when there's no owners?
Well, for a nonprofit, we're taking, if it's, say, for instance, maybe their president or chairman of the board, we're putting them as the controlling person.
Okay.
So if you're doing beneficial owner on those, you can actually, whoever that controlling person is, you can put them in as that contact info.
Yeah, they're the ones certifying the information.
They're the ones certifying the information.
Yeah.
That's right. In addition to the beneficial owner side. So that's what we've used.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's probably the best advice because I haven't entered one yet. So
Fantastic. Okay, this is a different take. How does this PPP loan affect an individual's credit score?
no credit is pulled. Doesn't at
Okay.
all.
Yep, nothing.
Gotta love that answer.
Yeah.
Someone looking ahead. And I know this gentleman. I'm looking for a startup SBA business loan. Would the load of PPP applications affect the new loan application? So what's realistic for someone?
Yeah.
That's gonna-
I'd wait a week or two to let us, if the funding runs out this week and they don't redo it, then we'll have some time on our hands. They do redo it, maybe give us another week. I know all hands on, at least for us, all hands are on board on this. We certainly don't want to turn away new business. We want to do it. So, if you want to get a quick call
Right.
together and we get you started, that'd be great. But as for getting undivided attention, it might be a week or two.
Wow. Okay. That's
Yeah,
that's
and this
better than
is
I would-
Russ,
Go, Russ.
this is Russ, what we've told folks is, we're still open for business. We're still doing all kinds of transactions, loans, and not just the PPP loans, but the SBA process is a longer process when you start looking at it. So getting them started with the SBA application and all the financial information that they're going to need to bring to there. So that's what we've kind of looked at, is at least get them started. But as far as getting an answer back within a short period of time, that's a different story. But we're still open for business. That's the other challenge for bankers. And Monica, you can agree with this, is we're still open. We're still having to do transactions, take care of our existing commercial customers, do the PPP loans, and do other types of loan products and services.
Yep. Very true. We closed 2 regular loans last week, but utilizing all of our people and resources to get everybody taken care of is kind of the critical key.
Okay. This is a nice take. Is the loan forgiveness based on gross pay or net pay?
I believe gross is the answer.
Yeah, but not the employer's contribution to FICA, right? I don't think they get that back.
No, I don't think they're.
No.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
I think that's why 941s are so important to use, because that's kind of what you're going to be basing it some off, unless they had other calculations.
Right. The documentation is key, isn't it? Another question regarding forgiveness. We're knocking them out of the park. We got maybe 12 minutes tops, and we might come really close to closing these out.
I might have 5 minutes in me, John. I got to get going, but I'll give you 5 minutes.
All right. You can do more in 5 minutes than.
Ditto here.
Okay. Well, you guys, and we'll send the questions out to you. So in your leisure, you can grab the last couple of them. Regarding forgiveness, does the loan money have to be used in 8 weeks, or could it, for example, be used toward payroll for 10 or 12 weeks?
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Eight
yeah.
weeks.
What I'm telling folks is maybe they're not as impacted today, and they feel like the impact is going to be down the road, but they want to take advantage of this now. The money that they would have paid employees, set that aside, and then when you're really in a pinch, that's when you'll use that money. So just it does have to be utilized now. I think of some of the businesses, you think a lot of landscape companies are doing okay today, but when they start doing big commercial jobs and businesses aren't able to pay them, or things just start slowing down at a halt, you know, so when money comes in now, set that aside, pay your people with this money, and then use it later.
Okay. Thank you. This person has a small manufacturing company that has paid his workers as 1099s. What documentation will the company need? This is not going to be good news.
Not good news.
No.
All your employees that are 1099 are considered independent contractors, and they will have to apply individually on their own. They're not technically employees.
Yeah, it's not part of the salary calculation.
Nope.
Another reason to, unfortunately, we preach to properly categorize employees as employees. If I have a 504, one of the SBA loans that buys a lot of real estate, if I have a 504 loan pending approval, will it be impacted if I apply for a relief loan?
Mm-mm.
I don't believe so, no.
No, they'll benefit from it if it closes. They'll benefit from the payment relief.
Absolutely. Yeah, they got 6 months on the
So
SBA.
go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is very similar. Is the SBA making 6 months of payments or only pay 1 month and deferring the rest? It's
Full payments, full principal and interest payments for 6 months.
fabulous. Let's see. And we've talked about this a little bit, but the LLC things come up a lot. If your LLC applied for your employees and received the loan funds for their payroll, can you then also employ for the business owner's shareholder draw? You should have factored that into the equation with the 2.5 months, right?
Yeah.
So if the only thing you used was your actual payroll, you probably got less, probably applied for less than you should have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to be respectful of your time here. Whoops, someone just realized the date and just signed in. How can we see the portion we missed? It's going to be, that's a great question. It's going to be on the state's, the KSBDC's main website. I'm going to spell that out, KANSASSBDC.net/COVID, COVID 19, no space in there. And not just that, but our resource partners, our regions throughout the state are putting fabulous things on there. We've got great information for employers, great information on applicants. Hey, I know this person, and they say they just got our PPP loan. Fantastic. We paid our April's rent before we received it. Now looking back, it would have been better not to pay April rent and just pay it now that we have the loan. However, could we pay July's rent with this money? This would be beyond their 8-week period. As long as they keep to normal business expenses to within 25% of the loan proceeds, right?
I did see something, and Russ or Vince chime in. I saw that you can't prepay things. So,
And that's a follow-up, basically asking if we can prepay rent.
I don't think you can.
Okay.
I have not seen anything that stated that prepay rent is acceptable.
So until we get better guidance, I'm going to say don't. But we may get better guidance in time for that to matter. And so be looking for communications by you guys and through the SBA website for an update. Hopefully we'll get that soon.
And this might be the last, well, we'll try for 2, but probably the last one. Is it possible to add yourself to a payroll if you're waiting to do so? Now that a portion of your staff is gone, you'll need to work the business more. So the owner is going to be working in the business more than before because they had employees.
Yeah, I think that's fine as long as they're paying themselves through W-2. I mean, typical payroll. Again, kind of open to interpretation, but if they're paying themselves the right way and they count as employee and they didn't count before, then I don't see why not. But what do you guys think?
I would agree with you as long as they're documenting.
Mm-hmm.
You document it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And okay, thank you. And I'll end with this one here, and then we'll divvy out the last ones because this is good. when looking at loan forgiveness, is it just full-time equivalents that need to match in number, or does the roster of people need to match as well? Can a prior part-timer become a full-time FTE, for example?
Yeah, again, just positions, not people. So yes.
Yes.
To Monica's point, my boss could fire me and hire me with somebody that she likes better.
That's
And Jessica,
right.
I know,
Yeah.
I know you're on this call and you're chomping at the bit to do that.
So Susie, replace John with Susie.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's just head count, really. Head count and salary should remain the same.
Yeah.
Okay. You all did a fabulous job. We're down to 7, so we'll divide and conquer. We'll send them out, and if you could, tackle a couple of those in I don't know what kind of time you have to yourself to do that kind of thing, and then we will put the video on the state website, and I mentioned that. Again, Kansas, spell it out, kansasSBDC.net/COVID-19, no hyphen in COVID-19, and a wealth of resources there. This video will be on there, prior videos. The entire transcript of the Q&A will be on there. It takes a couple of days to get this all out, but that'll all be on there. I cannot thank you 3 enough. Let's also thank Jack Harwell. He's behind the scenes, and he's been controlling this whole thing. So he's been doing a great job there. But oh my gosh, Russ, Monica, Vince, you are fabulous friends and professionals and resources and partners to the SBDC throughout the state and to the clients, so many clients that you impact and help. We can't thank you
Thank
enough
you.
for doing this.
Yeah,
So
so my pleasure.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure too.
thanks to you all. Be safe,
Thank you.
and we love you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.